All right, baby. We're live. Everybody, welcome back to another edition of Steelers Uncovered, your home for all Steelers related content here at the Undroppables Network. Um, Sorry for the delay, getting a couple technical issues figured out here. We got a new mic, so I hope my audio is nice and crisp for you. Shout out my sister, bringing the goods for Christmas, getting me a new podcasting mic. And, we got a lot to talk about today. Most of it, unfortunately, is not super positive. The 3-game losing streak is not ideal. However, it's something that, we've seen before. We've seen down the stretch of the last few seasons, this team start to falter a little bit. So we'll get into that, as well as some offensive and defensive personnel and scheme issues. But let's get it kicked off here with the intro video, and then we will be on our way. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that intro because that's probably going to be the most positive part of the show today. Again, I don't like always being negative. However, I'm tired of seeing the same results really the last 10 years with this team. And, we'll touch on that first, actually. So I saw a stat on Twitter the other day. So if you only look at after Thanksgiving, the last 6 seasons, so, last week of November on, the Steelers have had a 3-game losing streak in 4 out of the last 6 years. Okay. So what does that tell us? That means approaching December and January, so playoff time, this team has consistently not been playing its best football. And what that has led to is 3 playoff wins in the last 13 years, which, just simply is not good enough. And, Mike Tomlin, he's a fantastic motivator. Players love him, and I do think there's a lot of value in that. However, it just seems year after year, schematically, we've not been able to keep up with some of the top teams in the AFC. And, that's just, it's most evident from, you look at the game yesterday on Christmas, the Chiefs, they've been, okay, now in fairness, they're 15-1, so that they've had pretty much everybody's number. But if you're the Steelers, you're 10-5, you're fighting for the AFC North, and you consider yourself to be, a playoff contender. You want to see them play a top team like the Chiefs, close. The Chiefs this year, while they're 15-1, they've won a lot of close games. They haven't really been blowing teams out. We've seen them play close divisional games. Carolina took them down to the wire. So, this is not the Chiefs of 5 years ago where Tyreek Hill is running down the field and they're hanging 40 on everybody they play. So it would have been nice to see them keep this game a little bit closer. They didn't. They lost by 19. Honestly, could have been more. And I think what's most discouraging is just how lost they looked at times. So I'm going to get into the defensive issues a little bit here. So, we're in week 16 now. And, how many times do you see a player wide open on a big third down or red zone conversion, whatever it might be? And, everybody who's standing back there in the secondary, the linebackers, the corners, and the safeties, they're all kind of looking at each other with their palms up in the air, like I thought you had them, just the miscommunications are killers, especially as you approach the playoffs. These are things that need to be happening in week 1 and 2, when you got new players, maybe rookies, vets that, have come in for the first time. These communication issues should be things that are ironed out within the first couple weeks of the season. They shouldn't be happening, at the end of December, when you're trying to button up and get ready for the playoffs. And what's frustrating too is, our defensive coordinator, Terrell Austin, you see him on the sideline their play sheet is about the size of an index card, right? It's not that big. You see them holding it there. The Steelers, they are the highest paid defense, so they rely a lot on their, I'll say, your Jimmies and Joes versus your X's and O's, meaning they just let their guys win. So they don't do a ton of creative things on second, third, and long. They're going to line up and pretty much play their base defense on third and long. You have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith on either edge. You got Cam Hayward up the middle. And while those guys do win their one-on-one matchups a lot, when they don't get home, like yesterday, I don't think they sacked Mahomes at all. When they don't get home, it leaves your secondary exposed a little bit. And in the back end, they're very thin at corner. And even when they're healthy at corner, that has not been a position of strength for them this year. And they really got exposed not only yesterday, but each of the last 2 weeks as well, against the Ravens and the Eagles. So yes, while those are all very good teams, if like the Steelers, you consider yourself a playoff Super Bowl caliber type team, you need to be competitive in these games, and they simply have just not been. And for a team that has all the star power they do on defense, they've been giving up way too many yards, way too many points, but this is nothing new. I'm going to throw this all the way back to 2017. Really the last year, in my eyes, that the Steelers were legit Super Bowl contenders. They were the 2 seed in the AFC. That was the year that, the whole Jesse James catch, no catch thing happened against the Patriots. They lost. So instead of the 1 seed, they get the 2 seed, and, they host a playoff game against the Jaguars, who at the time their offense was struggling. And, they gave up 45 points at home, and they lost. It was an embarrassing loss. They were, that Jags team was good. They gave the Patriots all they could handle in the next round, but their offense had no business scoring 45 points. And again, it was just miscommunication after miscommunication, wide open people in the flat, down the field, and they lost. So that was 2017. Fast forward to the COVID year, to 2020. They get a home playoff game against the Browns, a team that historically they have a very good record against, and they give up 48 points at home against the Browns, and it's more of the same. It's missed tackles, it's blown assignments, people are wide open, like the other team just easily moving down the field at the worst possible time, right? A home playoff game against a division rival, they get absolutely gashed and lose again. So this has been a theme really the last 5-10 years, even if you go back. And, last year was no different. And, they lost those back-to-back games to the 2-win teams. They squeak into the playoffs and then lose by double digits, to Buffalo in round 1. This year, they're 8-3. They get into the part of the schedule where everybody knew was going to be super tough. Again, it's not so much losing to the Eagles and the Ravens and the Chiefs, because a lot of teams lose to them. It's more so the way of which they lost and how none of those games were exactly competitive. Let's go back to the Eagles game, which was now 2 weeks ago. They started the game in the first quarter. I think they got outgained 150 yards to 1. That is just way too slow of a start against a very good opponent. Like, you're never going to dig yourself out of that hole. A similar thing happened yesterday in the Chiefs game. I think the Chiefs started with well over 100 yards of offense, and, through most of the first quarter, the Steelers had 1 yard. And I'm not sure if you want to point to scheme for that, with Arthur Smith, his scripted opening drive. Those just haven't been working. I saw that is now 18 straight opening drives that the Steelers have not scored a touchdown on. I believe that ranks second in the league. Again, so they've really been struggling out the gate. And when you play those good teams, it's important to try to get off to a good start, and they just haven't been able to do that. You look at yesterday, 3 and out after getting 8 yards on first down, which is just flat out embarrassing. You have a bad punt, you give up a big punt return, and the Chiefs score 2 minutes later, and before you know it, you're down 6-0 to the best team in the NFL. Again, you're at home. The importance of starting fast against these teams cannot be stated enough. And the last 3 weeks, they just have not been able to do it. And it's frustrating because it's been happening for years in a row down at the most crucial part of the season in December and then into the playoffs in January. So um, I touched on the defensive issues a little bit, just about the miscommunications. What's been interesting is you've seen players in the locker room. They came about as close as they could without directly pointing a finger at somebody. Where the Alex Highsmiths, Cam Haywards, Deshaun Elliott's, TJ Watts of the world, they're all saying how a lot of people are committed on the team to doing their job. But if you have 10 guys doing your job and one guy not, it doesn't work and you get gashed. And with a lot of players reiterating that message, it's very weird. It seems like the defense is a little bit divided right now, and it's not surprising that they're agitated right now, just given how they've played the last month, because for the highest paid defense and a defense that is, just littered with stars at every level, it has simply not been good enough. They're letting opponents, I think it's the last 5 weeks, convert at a 70% rate in the red zone. I think they've scored heading into the Chiefs game, they had scored touchdowns on 21 out of 30 trips, which is quite frankly terrible red zone defense. It ranks bottom half of the, or not bottom half, bottom like 5 in the league. They've been giving up big plays. In games that they lose the turnover battle, I believe their record is 2-14. So while they can make big plays, they have the pass rushers that can get home and force fumbles. They have the guys in the secondary. I know Dante Jackson, I think, has 4 or 5 picks. They've taken the ball away a little bit there, but the defense is very opportunistic, meaning if they don't take the ball away, they can be had. It's a bend but don't break defense, and recently they've been breaking. You look at that Philly game, the decision to punt, down 2 scores with 10 minutes left is another thing. But anyways, they down Philly on the 2-yard line, and they don't even get the ball back. Philly goes on a 10-minute long drive. And again, for a defense with the players that they have, you got to think at some point they can doctor up a stop, and it just wasn't able to happen. So yes, the defense has been playing very poorly. It seems that people are starting to point fingers at each other, but they need to get this ship righted soon, because they have one more game against the Bengals, which is absolutely not a gimme win. Get down. Not a gimme win at all. And if they lose that, you're looking at a trip to either Baltimore or Buffalo in the first round. And we went to Buffalo last year. We saw how that went, and they just played at Baltimore a couple weeks ago, and they got doubled up. They lost by 17. So a win this week against the Bengals would be huge. It would solidify them as the 5 seed, I believe, and they would play at Houston in the first round, which would be a winnable game, which would be the first playoff victory since 2016. So we'll see if they can get that win against the Bengals. They are at home, but Joe Burrow and company have been hot recently, so we will see. But enough about the defense. I want to talk about the offense a little bit as well. Starting with the quarterback play. And, I think there's a couple reasons why we've seen Russ fall off a little bit. Starting with the absence of George Pickens. Well, he did play last week, but I'm more so talking about the couple games prior. We really saw them struggle without him. We know that receiver is probably their weakest position group on the team. Depth is just something that they did not have. Heading into the season, they traded Deontay Johnson, which I didn't have a problem with, but they never really directly replaced him. If it weren't for Calvin Austin being a pleasant surprise, this room would have next to nothing. You look at yesterday's game with Pickens back in the lineup, the Chiefs' best corner, Trent McDuffie, really followed him for most of the game. But he is far and away their best corner. And after him, there's not much to work with there. You can tune into some of the Chiefs shows we have with Greinberg, talk to some of the Chiefs fans in the Undroppables Network. The corner position after losing L'Jarius Sneed outside of McDuffie has been a problem for them. And, the next 2 receivers in line after Pickens and Calvin Austin, you got Mike Williams and Van Jefferson combined for 0 catches. Like, that is not good enough. And sometimes you got to have the pieces on offense. You look at a lot of the quarterbacks who are putting up really good numbers. Look at who they're throwing to, right? Look at the Bengals. Joe Burrow's thrown to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Look at Minnesota. Look at what Sam Darnold's been able to do. He has Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So I do think it's a two-way street. While Russ could absolutely play better, I thought he made a bad decision yesterday. I did see a clip that some were pointing that Pickens did not run his route to hold the deep half safety towards the sideline, which would have opened up that throw to Freiermuth. But again, he's looking down the field. He threw it into triple coverage regardless. I did not think that was a great decision. Red zone turnovers you just cannot have. The pick six he threw to Marlon Humphrey against the Ravens was probably his worst throw of his Steelers career. He's been holding on to the ball a lot and taking more sacks, which is not ideal, especially in my eyes, and I'm sure most fans as well. They've seen the offensive line start to deteriorate a little bit, as the season has gone on. Both tackles yesterday had a rough day. They were getting beaten early and often by Karlaftis and Mike Dana. They were making it tough for Russ, and this was all without Chris Jones too, their best interior rusher. So I think, maybe losing James Daniels and rookie first-round pick Troy Fautanu, it's starting to rear its ugly head. The line, while improved from last year, there's been times where it just has not been getting the job done in both the passing and the running game. So I think that's some of it too. I don't want to overly blame the quarterback position. Russ does have 17 touchdowns and now 5 picks to this point in the season, which is not terrible. I think he's opened up some things down the field that, Justin Fields did not in his 6 games as the starter. The one big difference being that Fields' mobility is obviously, a lot better than Russ's. While Russ can move a little bit, with the way the line's been playing recently, really just hasn't been enough to avoid some poorly timed sacks. We've really seen it during this 3-game losing streak that the line play just has not been good enough, and that's kind of correlated to, Russ playing worse as well. He is 35 years old. We did see him kind of fade a little bit last year down the stretch as well, which ultimately led to him getting benched. So maybe it's a little bit of him too. I'm sure it is. But again, you can never really point to one thing specifically. Couple other things here I want to talk about. Arthur Smith. I think he's done a much better job than what they've had at coordinator the last couple years. That's setting the bar pretty low. But I think he has schemed up a few things that have been working. The problem is it's taking too long to work, as I already mentioned, and they're getting in holes in the first quarter. If they could start a little bit faster, even if you don't score on the opening drive, pick up a few first downs, flip the field, maybe let your defense get hot, let a couple of those pass rushers do their thing. And, you might find yourself in a little better position than trailing right off the bat, like they have been the last 3 weeks. Talking about the running game a little bit. So a lot of people, I think, have been, and this has been a common theme really the last 3 years, is everybody is on the Jaylen Warren train. And he's a great back. Don't get me wrong. He's fantastic in pass pro. He runs very hard. He has a lot of burst. He's a good receiver. He's a very nice luxury to have in the backfield. The problem is, the evidence is there that I don't think he can handle full volume. We've seen him not be as effective. And, we've seen him, with some ball security issues. Najee, he's not everybody's favorite type of back. He's not super fast. He occasionally will break a long run. If you look at the numbers, which will be a surprise to some people, I think in the last 3 years, he's 4th in the NFL in explosive runs over 20 yards. The only people he's trailing are McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry. So for his speed and, what he lacks physically, he still can give you some big playability. But I don't necessarily think that the running game would be fixed if Warren became the full-time starter. A lot of people, I see that all over Twitter. Anytime Warren's in the game, he makes a nice play, like, oh, he should be the starter. Najee should never re-enter the game, blah, 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 this and that. It's not that easy, okay? This is now 4 straight years that Najee's ran for 1,000 yards. He's a very capable back. He's a durable back. And, there's a lot of value to that. While Warren is great, he, I believe, excels in his limited role. I don't know that he's the same player if you give him 20 carries a game from week 1 throughout the course of the season. 1, I don't know that he would last, but 2, the numbers have shown that he's not as effective. If you just look at last year in general, percent of running plays with 7 or more players in the box, Jaylen Warren, 23% of the time, he's running the ball with 7 or more in the box. 39% of the time, Najee Harris is running the ball with 7 or more in the box. That's a big difference, and that can be easily correlated to, if you look at stats like yards per carry, rushing yards over expectation, things like that. My point is, they're both good running backs. They both should play. Harris actually has been outsnapped by Warren the last 4 games. I think a lot of that has been due to their losing the game. They've been losing, so the game script changes a little bit. They're throwing a little bit more. As I mentioned, Warren is very good in pass pro, so you see him taking a lot of those reps. So as a matter of fact, Warren has been playing a little bit more, and as we've seen, it hasn't exactly correlated to more points. As the last 3 weeks, they've struggled to score. So I honestly think if there's one thing to point at on the offense, it's their usage of those 2 running backs is probably the least thing that we should be concerned about. They're both effective and they both play, and that's been a positive for them really the last 3 years. So I have no issues there. The only issue I do have is it seems like every game this year we can't go a game without getting some sort of design touch for Cordero Patterson in the backfield. I don't really know why that's necessary. He should be an emergency back only and be used as a kick returner only. That's his specialist. He's one of the best kick returners of the last 15, 20 years. I have no issue with him playing there. If you want to spell him or if you want to put him in, if one of the other 2 backs is injured, fine. But, drawing up plays for him in meaningful situations, I don't get it. He did score on that wheel route against the Ravens, which was nice. But, the 3rd and 3 yesterday, an inside zone to Cordell Patterson on 3rd and 3. It's just head scratching. It really is. So that's probably the only gripe I have in the backfield there is the weird weekly design touch for number 84. But, that's all. I do think Harris and Warren have been a good 1-2 punch. The problem is, the line has just been struggling. And if you guys follow Dan Orlovsky at all on Twitter, he actually did a couple cut-ups today of the Steelers' run game yesterday and why it wasn't really, really effective until the game was out of hand. And the main problem is they're struggling climbing to the second level. They're either not getting there or they're just flat out whiffing. And if you're curious what this means, just kind of replay yesterday's game or any of the last couple games in your heads. How many times have you seen a run get tackled for 0, 1, or 2 yards, and it's either a linebacker or a safety that flies in unblocked and makes the play? I can think of 3 or 4 times in the first half alone yesterday where, guys were flying downhill, we're not getting a body on them, and it ruins first down. They're not exactly a team that can routinely get behind the sticks and, beat you through the air. We talked about the struggles in the receiver room and how they're not very deep. And it's one of the worst rooms in the league outside of Pickens. And again, without the pleasant surprise of Calvin Austin, you're not left with much. And, when you're routinely getting behind the sticks, you're tipping your cap, you're trying to run on first down and you're getting stuff for no gain. It's made it hard to sustain drives. And that's really been what's killing them during this 3-game losing streak. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but you see them starting slow. They're getting killed in the first quarter in yardage. And, by the fourth quarter, the defense is tired. It's leading to more missed tackles, more miscommunications. So really, there's not exactly one person or reason to blame for this losing streak. It's kind of a collective effort of everybody. The offense is not doing their job, and the defense is certainly not doing their job. But what does this point to at the end of the day? At some point, the man in charge needs to be held accountable. And I started off this show saying that, Mike Tomlin, I do think he's a great motivator. Players love to play for him. There's a lot of value in that. But again, just over and over, time and time again, just getting out coached schematically. On the defensive side of the ball, especially, which is his forte, the miscommunications, guys looking at each other. There's way too much money spent on that side of the ball to be as porous as they've been. And, you look at, let's take the last decade in a nutshell, how many defensive coordinators they've had, offensive coordinators, quarterbacks. At the end of the day, the one common denominator in all of this is the head coach. And yes, I do acknowledge that never having a losing season in 17 years or whatever, 18 years is a great accomplishment. I'm not discounting winning in the regular season, because that is important. However, at the end of the day, what are you getting out of those seasons, right? Like going 10-7 in a first round exit, going 9-8 and not making the playoffs, going 8-1 and not making the playoffs, going 13-3 and losing in the first round or after a bye, losing in the divisional round after a bye. Like, it's just been frustrating. And I think that's why a lot of fans are starting to feel fed up. And it's looking like this year is also heading down that path. Maybe they beat Houston if they win against the Bengals. They're having struggles of their own, so that would be a winnable game. But even if they win that, they got to go back to Arrowhead. And if it's anything like we saw yesterday, it's going to be another ugly performance. I think, fans, myself included, are just growing tired of seeing the same results at the end of every season. Again, three playoff wins in the last 12, probably about to be 13 years. Just isn't good enough for some of the personnel that has been in this building. And, it's tough. It's frustrating. I think I did a good job outlining some of the reasons why. But again, shouldn't be a surprise. You look at the title of the show today, Same Old Song and Dance. This game on Christmas, when they announced the schedule, back in August, I was trying to pick a game to go to. And, that was a game that I circled not to go to, was the Chiefs on Christmas, because I could have told you exactly how that was going to play out because we've seen it before, right? You look at the Buffalo, another game is the Buffalo regular season game. What was it? 2 years ago, maybe. Kenny Pickett. They lost like 38-3, something like that. When they play these top tier, Philly, same thing this year. They play these top tier teams, and it just looks like they're a couple of steps behind. And it's really looked like that since Big Ben left. Not left. Since Big Ben prior to his elbow surgery, that's really the last time that we've had a team out there that's been capable of beating anybody on a weekly basis. The sky's obviously not falling. The Steelers are 10-6. They have a lot of good players on this team. They're going to they clinched the playoffs already. But again, it just feels like they're going nowhere this year, which has been the recurring theme. So same old song and dance, unfortunately. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. If they beat the Bengals and beat Houston, that'll put a smile on my face. All I've been asking Santa for this year is a playoff win, so maybe we'll get it. You never know. But all right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Flying solo today, so I didn't want to keep everybody too long. Please make sure, if you like the content, if you're not a fan of the Steelers, but if you're a fan of any other team, we have dozens of teams. We're almost filled actually here at the Undroppables at UnCovered. Just to name a few, we got the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, Eagles, Cardinals, Seattle, Denver. We got a lot of teams covered. So if the Steelers aren't your thing and you were tuning in, just to hear some kid from Pittsburgh talk and bitch about the Steelers after Christmas, if your team's on here, make sure you subscribe, hit the follow and like button down below. I will definitely try to get at least one more Uncovered done this season, whether that's after the Bengals game or after the playoff game. I will plan for that. I will do my best to try to get a guest as well, so y'all don't have to hear me blab for half an hour. But thank you for tuning in. Please, again, make sure to like and subscribe on Twitter as well as YouTube. And until next time, here we go, Steelers.